No, I don't think either one of my. I don't have a gavel, so I'll just do that a few times and say welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody. What's the date? September the 16th?
Correct.
Good. Welcome to the September 16th meeting of the Charter Review Committee. As we get started, as Wayne just said, there must be something important going on because we have three members of the County Council here tonight. Vice President Joe Holloway. Joe sitting back there just reading the Salisbury Independent, it looks like. Welcome. John Cannon, welcome. Josh Hastings, welcome. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to serve. Two of our members, Catherine is not here tonight. I think it's worth saying out loud, she's going to see George Thorogood in concert tonight. So good for Catherine. She's definitely has her priorities straight. Right, I know, you don't know. She's had tickets for 2 years, so I said, you absolutely go see George Thorogood, maybe down in Freeman. And David Plotz's son's birthday is today, so David's going to spend time with his son, so happy birthday. So with that, let's get into business. I'll call for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Over there, Phil, second. Sharon, thank you. Any questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from our September the 2nd meeting. Take a motion. Thank you, Tony. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Wayne. Any questions or changes on the minutes? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so that's unanimous.
I
Yeah.
wasn't here last week.
So
I'm abstaining.
we're going to have one abstention from Matt and one from Bob who were not present at the last meeting. Anyone else? All right. So with those abstentions, the minutes carry. All right, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, as you look in the next number 3, it's charter amendments by bond council, and that's Charter Section 313, Section 704, Section 710, Section 712, Section 312, and then a few more, 710 and 712s. Those are, Lindsay Rader is Wicomico County's bond counsel. She is a really technical person who
Yes.
you may recall, the group may recall, she sent us a pretty voluminous piece of work. I just had conversation with Paul. Paul and I were unable to connect today to discuss this.
Right.
So Paul, why don't you tell us what you and I just talked about and what your recommendation might be, and then how we might move forward at our next meeting. And feel free to kind of talk at that macro level about the technical aspects of Lindsay's recommendations and where you might be willing to weigh in at our next meeting.
Right. What I would say is that she's bond counsel. That's a very specialized area, as I'm sure Bob knows. And this memo is quite technical. Mike and I were talking about how would we present it, and what I want to do is get a little more familiarity with it so that we'll go into some of these technicals. The overall view is she is making recommendations that hopefully will make our bonding process smoother, easier, and more malleable, easier to work with than what we have right now. But I would prefer to do that at the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And what Paul is going to do is ask Lindsay to attempt to draft shortened language because, again, think of being a voter and walking into that ballot box and seeing 6 questions relative to bonding in the county. And I don't know if many people, so Paul's going to consult with Lindsay, and then we will bring her versions of recommendations forward at the October the 7th meeting. Is that okay with the committee? All right.
Mike,
Yes, sir. Wayne first and then Bob. Yes, sir.
could we put together, between Paul and Lindsay, could we put together some sort of a practical synopsis of the practical implications of what she is proposing? Because this stuff is really in the weeds.
It is, yes.
So not just, Wayne, if I'm hearing you, not just, here's Lindsay's recommendations, but then give us some verbiage that says, okay, here's why.
Yeah.
Here's what it does.
And here's why, and here's what it does.
Yeah.
You make that happen, Paul?
Yeah,
Group,
well-
Michelle, yes, please?
Just one comment on
Certainly.
all of it. And
Certainly.
I've looked through Lindsay's briefly, not in depth.
No.
But is this really something that the charter, just like we did with last week on
Yeah.
tax caps, is this something that we really should be trying to tweak in the charter and put referendums out for? Or is this something that should be worked out? And Wayne, you can probably answer this, or Joe sitting over there. Is this something that
Yeah.
should be worked out by council and executive and Lindsay Rader?
Michelle, you raise an exceptionally valid point. It's in the charter, thus we punted, if you will, and got Lindsay's advice.
Right.
I'll certainly entertain among the committee sitting before that question. Hold, please. Bob, you also had a comment. Did you want to weigh in on that comment now?
Well,
Michelle, get right to you.
it was going to be addressed to Paul,
Okay.
and as everybody already said, this is fairly technical material, and in line with what Michelle is saying, even after we're done, I'm not sure I'm going to fully understand it.
Yeah.
So as a practical matter, if the bond council recommends it,
Yeah.
and you as county attorney recommend it, then I'm probably going to agree that whatever change you all want is what ought to be made in the charter.
Right.
But I have one question. And I know you may not be able to answer at this moment, but what I would like to know is whether or not all the bond changes can be put in one question, or are you going to have to divide it up into 6 questions? Because because part of what we're
Yeah.
going to talk about tonight and in the future
Yeah.
is we're going to start ranking things.
Right.
And if you're going to tell me that we have to do 6 separate changes, I'm probably not going to want to touch it.
The,
And if the county council wants to deal with it, they can deal with it.
Right.
But I don't necessarily want to use that
Yeah.
to the exclusion of other things that I think are important in the charter. So I'm hoping you can come back and say, if we do this, then we can put it in 1 or 2 things.
yeah, that's, I think, an issue that goes through everything we're doing here, is how, when it goes to the council, and the council decides what changes they wish to make, and if it's going to be extensive, how to present that to the voters
Voter, sure.
so that it's understandable and passes legal muster. And I think there's a way to do it, yes, but it's going to be a winnowing down. So to answer Bob's question, I think if you want to just leave this for the council to look
that's-
at with Lindsay's recommendations, taking your idea,
Michelle, that's right? Yeah.
I could see that, because is it going to go to Bob's point, is it going to be one of the high-ranking items?
Let me ask a question. If we punted and turned to our friends on the county council,
Yeah.
if they decided to make any change,
Yeah.
it would ultimately have to go onto a ballot, would it not?
Yes, it will. I mean, all changes
So
are
still
going
has to go
the
to a ballot no matter what.
Yes.
So it's either,
It's going to be presented. You know,
Right.
It's advertised.
I would,
It's on the ballot.
as we have done throughout, whenever we have council members here, they are welcome to be part of this process and say anything they want. They're also welcome to sit there and say nothing. If you have any thoughts that you might wish to share with this committee regarding this pretty complicated set of bond questions that are in need of review, and either we do it or you do it one at a time, 2 a year for the next 6 years, I don't know. And you're welcome to sit there and punt. John, if you'd like to come to the microphone, absolutely. And
Can I have a
Certainly, Matt,
point
yes.
of order? Is it required by state law that this, in this detail, has to be in the charter?
What, the bonding provisions?
Well, I'm going to look at it from the other perspective, would be to back up and make it simple and general, and then allow the councils and the executive and the bond attorney to tweak it as things change. And I don't, I mean, I'm in over my head on this too, so it seems like, I mean, you put this, in all fairness, putting something like this on the ballot is going to be,
Understood.
Yeah.
Wayne, John, we'll get to you. Thank you. Wayne, yes, sir.
When we issue bonds, the finance director and the county attorney have to provide an opinion that the bond legislation language is in conformity with the county charter.
Right.
So,
And the language typically is in the charter, the bonding language.
so that's it's either legally required in Maryland, or it's a tradition that's been there for hundreds of years.
I think it's going to be a legal requirement.
it's a legal requirement,
Oh, that answers that, okay.
Michelle.
Michelle?
Looking at this, I see that in 2000,
Where are you, Michelle, please?
I'm on 313 on the bonding, and I see in
Yep.
2008 there were changes made there, or amendments made on Section B and Section C.
Yes, correct.
So, I mean, there have been
So
changes made.
voters have been brave enough to tackle this question. But I guess, so let's do this. And Michelle, I'm going to look to you because, again, I think your first question is really pretty germane and we're all on the same page. If the committee's okay, let's let Paul and Lindsay attempt to, I'm sorry, John, I will get to you. I apologize. John, actually, why don't you come forward now and share your thoughts? I apologize. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think something that's cut and dry, black and white, legal, yes or no, without question, send it away. Send it straight to Mr. Wilbur, to the council. I think really what you all are going to be really good at, and you've shown that you're very good at, is giving the council some type of either interpretation or unique perspective. That's what the role is here. I think that's what the county citizens want to see, something that's separate from what maybe I might think, or Joe or Josh might think.
Sure.
That way it's independently done, objectively handled.
Okay.
Regarding the multitude of changes, Tony, I don't know if I don't want to put you on the spot, but you were the last president in the council form of government. Do you, can you enlighten us at all? Because I'm not really 100% familiar with it. I'm assuming that with a new charter, an entire new charter had to be voted on. And I'm wondering if in a similar way, that we might be able to take the multitude of changes required here and figure out some way to consolidate it for one vote, similar to what was done with the other charter. Could be completely out of line, but I'm just curious.
Well, that charter went on the ballot in 2004. And then to start in 2006.
Right.
We went through the charter. There was a committee like this that worked it up. And then actually that council sat in afternoon work sessions and went through the entire charter with the county attorney present. And then we felt we had a document that would work. And then on the 2004 ballot, it went on there and it was voted in.
So I guess the real
Heavily
question
voted
is,
in.
on the ballot, I know they didn't put the whole charter on the ballot. How did the public fairly be considered legally and fairly know that this was a legitimate, that they could do
Well,
it?
you know, as I remember, it was yes or no on charter form of government.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how.
That was it. Everything continued.
I think that's what it's done. I don't know.
Sure. Yes, sir, Joe, please. Thank you.
Excuse my dress.
No worries. It's all good.
To John's point, I understand what he's saying, and when you get too many questions on a ballot,
Yeah.
it gets confusing and people just start checking off the marks or don't vote at all.
Yep.
But the other thing we've seen since that change has happened is it seems like every year, once or twice, we find things in our charter that doesn't apply to the executive form of government. So no matter how we change it and what we change, you're going to find 6 months or a year from now, oh, we forgot that.
Sure.
Or we didn't cover that part of it because we didn't think of it, or somebody didn't think of it, so.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Wayne, yes, sir.
Yeah, the last point I'd like to make is, since 2008, the credit markets have changed dramatically. There are a lot more requirements. If any of you have taken out a loan in the past 12 months, you've had to sign about a dozen documents having to do with COVID. And a lot of these technical changes that Lindsay is suggesting arise from just the natural evolution, if you will, of the credit markets and what lenders are looking for in terms of a bond bill. So it's really dry technical stuff, but
Necessary.
very necessary.
Okay. So, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Julie, I think I saw your hand. Sorry? Trying to
I
look.
have worked with bonding
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I did read through this, and I do think the recommendations are valuable, correct. The one thing I really do, if we can only pick one out of the 6 or whatever, really like to push for making the 30-year term to 40, because USDA works on 40 years and at wonderful rates. And we certainly don't want to go into water and sewer infrastructure projects with constrained from the charter at 30 years when they'll allow 40 routinely and have done for ages. So I just like to put that out.
That's a great point. Paul? Yes, sir.
And going to the larger
Julie.
question of how
Yep.
to present this, you're going to make a recommendation, and the council's going to decide what will be on the ballot. We've looked at that a little bit, and there's Baltimore City did a charter, and their charter question was one sentence. It was a complete revamp of a charter, and they did it with one sentence ballot question, which I think is a little extreme. But the courts that have looked at this have looked heavily at the advertisement that was done to give public notice
Okay.
to back up a short ballot question. So we will work on that as a legal matter,
Right.
but ultimately it'll be up to the council
Right.
to decide.
I would like to put every single recommendation, with all the time you spent on it, on the ballot. Figure out how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, so do we. So Paul, I'm looking around for other questions. Paul, what I think we'll ask of you as a committee is, so take Lindsay's voluminous stuff, pare it down to 4 or 5 things.
Yeah.
You're going to look at whether we can get all those bond questions rolled into one package, if that's legal.
Yeah.
You'll provide the practical synopsis of what in the world Lindsay is telling us, and then we will do the best we can. Again, Michelle, your point's very valid. We'll then, armed with the information, we can make a determination of whether we're going to take it on or whether we're going to
Yeah.
punt
Right.
as a group.
We'll ask Lindsay to give us
Is that-
bond issuance for dummies. How about that?
Yeah, and then if we punt, we'll pass it along to bond issuance for dummies for our council. So Sharon, yes,
I
please.
just wanted to add to Joe's point when or Tony's, whoever said it, when the initial question was placed on the ballot, the question was to the form of government, not anything else. And it read, the official ballot question was a comprehensive revision of the charter of Wicomico County establishing a system of government in an elected county executive who would have executive functions and an elected county council which has legislative functions. That's it.
That was it.
That was in,
That was our one sentence, if you will.
One sentence
Sure.
and a rewrite.
that was in 2004.
I just got rid of it. Yeah, 2004.
Okay. So we okay as a committee with marching orders for Paul? Okay. So that brings us on the agenda down to item number 4, which is a review of the workshop materials that are ready. I'm going to back up for a second. Remember, as a group, we have worked our way through the charter on its first pass with a few caveats because we know we have a few workshop items that are still out there. Matt Tillman and I are working on 407B and C. Sonia is working on a question back regarding the audit. Harry Basehart, Dr. Harry Basehart from Salisbury University, retired. Remember, he approached the committee early on to talk about redistricting. Bob has been working with Dr. Basehart. He'll be here on the 7th. So on the 7th, right now, we have Lindsay Rader. We have Section 407B and C. We have a workshop report from Sonia. We have a workshop report from Dr. Basehart. So those are 4 things that we'll be looking at on October the 7th. Okay? Are there any other workshop items? I watch in your face, Michelle. Yeah.
I'll do a workshop item too.
Okay, great. So,
It's on the, going back to Kramer and all.
thanks, Michelle. So with that, right, I'm just trying to follow along. Does anybody else have a workshop item on the table for tonight? Okay. What we'll do now then, according to the agenda, grab your scorecard. It's the one that's got all the green stuff all over it that Laura was kind enough, again, giving shout out along the way, both to the committee and to Laura. We made a decision early on, because this gets a little bit dizzying up here, to keep a running scorecard of what changes we have made. Laura has done that. Laura has had it posted, more importantly for the public than for us and our small brains up here and our scattered brains of losing track. So this scorecard, for those who may be watching at home or here, is on the Charter Review Committee tab within the Wicomico County Council website, and it's right there. So Bob Benson and I had good conversation earlier today, as did Laura and I. And what we're going to do is the same way that we have worked through the charter sequentially, we're going to work through the changes that we have recommended, and those changes are in green. Now, tonight, we are not in this first pass, and because we still have some things that we have to address. We're not prioritizing tonight, okay? I want everybody to just concentrate on the work that we've done, on the motions that we've put forth. We will review them and again see if we're still cool with kind of where we were. And if we're not, we'll, again, as we have discussed all along, this is bringing it back to the table for review and making sure that we're still where we thought we were. And by the way, everything is open for discussion again, but I'll go through this just like I did with everything else. Any changes or thoughts on question A, B, or C, and we'll proceed that way. Is that okay with the committee? Any questions on what we're about? Yes, sir, Dallas.
Yeah, just, if there were sections in here that there were a couple sessions that I missed, if we had questions or things we wanted to ask about, are we allowed to revisit those moving forward, or is it just, no, what's on the list is all we're talking about?
You know, if somebody feels strongly enough, this is a democracy after all. Put it on the table. The idea will either get shot down right away, or it won't get shot down right away, and we can take it from there if that's okay. All right. So the first big green blob. On the 25th of March, wow, that's a long time ago, we met, and the first 3 things were really about how we were going to organize, so they're not germane. The first real thing that this group made a motion on and worked on relative to the charter was, the first thing was to address reviewing the charter as it pertains to what Sharon was just mentioning, the executive and council form of government. The group, oh, you know what, I forgot, Doug Gosnell is not here, and I failed to recognize that, so I apologize, Doug. The committee voted unanimously to keep the county executive form of government and the county council form of government. So I'll look around the table, see if there are any thoughts. Okay, we'll cross that one off the list. small one that we put on there was to add a table of contents to the charter, right, at the beginning, just to kind of help not just us, but anybody who might be bored enough to want to look at the county charter someday. So we've added a table of contents. We're cool with that? All right. On our,
Can I-
yes, of
I'm
course,
sorry.
Bob.
Mr. Wilbur, do we need to amend the charter to add a table of contents?
I think that's more of a clerical.
A couple things went back and forth, whether they were clerical or not, but
Yeah.
if it could be
It's-
clerical, that would take it off the table as a recommendation.
Yeah.
Leave
I mean, I agree, it's probably a good idea to have a table
Yeah,
of contents.
I think it's a good idea, too.
But I mean, I just wonder if we have to put it on the ballot and have the county voters vote on it.
I
It
don't
seems
think
to me
Yeah.
No.
So we can, Laura, I'm looking at you, we're going to label that one clerical. That's to add a table of contents. Great suggestion, thank you.
I mean, clearly it was the consensus of this
Absolutely.
charter committee that we should have a table of contents. If, I want to be hopeful that we don't need to
Amend the charter.
amend the charter to do that, and I'm hopeful that you all can do that without us having to,
End up in court.
right.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Probably just ask the publisher to
Yes.
put it together.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Just technical correction.
Understood. Very good. The next one is 201, and that's having to do with the 5 council-manic districts and 2 at-large members as written in the current charter. That is what Dr. Basehart is going to be talking about. That's one of his assignments that we'll be talking about on October the 7th. So if it's okay with the group, we'll kind of put a pass on 201A.
Actually, I think he's on 201B.
He's 201B, which is a residency requirement for the county council.
Well, his notes,
District, no.
That's 202A.
Go ahead, yeah, we can take pause, it's all good. Even though we've been at this for 5 months, 6 months, we're still rookies here, it's all good. So 201 has to do with composition of districts.
right, 201B is districting procedures.
Yes.
And that's what he's going to.
That's what he's going to talk about. Excuse me. Thank you. So, thank you, Bob. Correct. I remember we had good discussion. So, continuing with, and Catherine's not here, but I recall that she was kind of urging, we are going to continue with 5 council districts and then 2 at-large members as called for in the current charter. That's 201A. Thoughts? All right. Thank you. 202A, that is, I'm sorry, 201B, we haven't done yet. Okay, thank you. 202A, apologies. That's a residency requirement for the county council. You must live for 2 years in Wicomico County and residency within the district for 1 year, and then a minimum age of 25 years to run for office. And those matching criteria would also apply to anyone running for county executive. Everybody cool with, yes, sir, Tony?
You made the age of the county executive first.
Yeah.
It's farther down.
Further down.
Thank you, I apologize, thank you. So that's county,
Matches the qualifications for the county executive.
thank you.
Right.
All right, thank you for that, Tony. We'll get to the 30-year requirement in just a little bit, is that right? Thank you for that. To include in the charter violations.
Sorry, can I-
Yes, sir, Matt, absolutely, yep.
Does the person need to be 25 years to run? Does the person need to be 25 years on election day? Or do they need to be 25 on the day that they would be sworn in?
I think we talked about that. I did, I do. I don't remember what the answer was, but I think we talked about it.
I thought we said to serve.
To serve. So I can file when I'm 24, but before I get sworn in, I must be 25.
Okay, so we want to stick the words in there, minimum of 25 years of age to serve. Is that a fair statement? Under
The minimum is 25. So I'm going to go, bear with me. To run for president, you got to be 35 years old. That means, I've always taken that to mean, that means you've got to be 35 years old when you file to run.
Then make it file.
Excuse me?
Make it file then if you think it's better to do it as file. Makes it simpler.
Is there a standard definition though for, I mean, because like Mike was saying, it's in the, for federal office, there's an age requirement. I'm sure somewhere in the law, it defines what that age means, filed or taking.
I'm sure it does. I don't know off the top of my head how that's worded, so
So,
we can look it up.
Yeah, you just look it up and see.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we don't have to define that. Maybe it's already defined in the law somewhere.
who's going to look that up? Paul?
Yeah, I can look it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll try to, I'm just taking notes. Thank you. Short of the caveat that we're looking into, we're okay with keeping 202A as we, yes, Sonia?
I'm just, so the caption for it would still be qualified voter? So I'm not looking at the right 202A, right? It's the one in the charter that says qualified voter, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I know we're adding the residency requirement. I'm just wondering, does it change the caption, or is it still qualified voter? We're just adding a residency piece to the qualified voter caption. You understand what I'm asking? Like, we have
Yes.
additional wording. It's not quite, doesn't quite fit with qualified voters, so I didn't know. And I'm not trying to make it complicated. I'm just trying to remember what happened on March 25th.
This was actually April the 8th.
I'm sorry, excuse
So
me.
what, Sonia, I think what you're asking is 202A in the current charter, first two words are qualified voter.
That's what those sentences after it means, what that is. This is more than qualified voters. So I don't know if it's going to be a different section. It's just, I was confused. I've confused myself. So I'm asking y'all to help me.
Yeah,
I viewed this as additional qualifications, not a replacement.
Yeah.
In other words, you're saying to amend it and add that in, that they would have to have these additional requirements in addition to being a qualified voter.
Yes, ma'am, that's how I had read this.
So it could still be part of 202A? We wouldn't need to make another section or anything that says, okay.
Just added to 202A, I think.
I know it's a recommendation. It really was the qualified voter. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if there's another wording for it or not, and I don't know if we need to go that far.
as Michelle just said it, I think qualified voter additional requirements is what will
Okay.
sort of, so.
Okay.
So that says voter, and we're actually talking about candidate.
Right. It's different.
It is a little bit different, so.
It's different.
Okay, right, sorry. Okay.
So maybe it needs to change
Changing
qualified candidate.
But it's still it's qualifications though, because so it all falls under candidate.
put an F.
It does fall under candidate, even though it says voter.
Right,
So it refers to the candidate, but.
So maybe
but we're different,
in order to run, you got to be a qualified voter?
but you gotta be a qualified
Yes.
voter.
You've got to be registered to vote?
Yep.
Yes, and you need, we're saying you need a residency requirement.
And there's a resident. So there's a change in residence on 202E.
Right, no.
I just want to make sure that.
I wonder if we should just
be
have
enough.
Mr. Wilbur put this together for us.
I was thinking that.
Sorry, I'm dizzied at the moment, I'm sorry, and I
Why not just add
apologize.
Why not just add another letter and
Thank
put the
you.
residency
That would make it
requirement?
easier.
Because it's all under the heading, section 202 is qualifications. We're saying adding this as a qualification
I agree.
to run for office.
Okay, so we would be adding a 202F or a 20, right? Do we want to assign what we're doing here? Adding,
I would say what you would do is make it a B,
Yeah,
make the new paragraph a B and push everything else down.
okay. Okay,
And shift the other, accordingly.
everybody okay with that? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Ooh, it is dizzying, sorry. All right. 202D. Having, bless you, somebody.
Bless you.
This had to do with charter violations that had moral fortitude, felony, and charter violations. We're going to include felony with moral turpitude to a bad thing that you shouldn't do. And you would forfeit your time in office to, if you are convicted of a crime involving a felony with moral turpitude. Right?
But moral,
Just matches the language
Right.
in the other section.
Correct.
yeah, moral turpitude is in there,
Right.
in D.
Right, but we, for whatever reason, wanted to add felony with moral turpitude.
Convicted of a felony involving moral that doesn't work.
This is why we're going over the scorecard again.
You could have a misdemeanor. Moral turpitude.
Yeah.
That wouldn't disqualify you if you use felony.
Okay, but, okay, do you
They
have
want a felony, put
felonies
Oh, sure.
of moral turpitude?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like what?
I mean, the language in
Hold on,
section.
hold on. Sorry, I don't have a gavel. Go ahead, Bob.
The section 409 for the county executive says the county executive shall immediately forfeit the office if he ceases to be a qualified voter of the county or is convicted of a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude. I think this is supposed to say felony. I mean, you could have a crime of moral turpitude that's not a felony, but not all felonies involve moral turpitude.
No.
I mean, I'm going back to law school here, so Mr. Wilbur can correct me, but moral turpitude, basically, I think you're talking about things where somebody tells a lie or
Right.
something related to that. So if I went out and shot somebody, I'd be guilty of a felony, but it
Yep.
may not be a crime involving moral turpitude.
Right. Not all felonies are felonies of moral turpitude. That's right.
I thought I remember Mr. Baker making this motion. He wanted to add the word felony to be consistent so that it was consistent with the charter. So I think it's supposed to read the same as section 409.
Sounds right.
Felony or a crime involving.
Yeah, I mean, am I not correct, Mr. Baker? Isn't that what you intended?
No, that's exactly it. It was just, there was matching the qualifications for.
So we want to match this to 409. Paul, I hope you're taking good notes tonight. I
I
am.
think Mr. Baker's argument was that whatever was valid for the county executive should equally apply to the county council.
And we've
we
got
want to be
to
consistent.
clean up our language.
Right.
Okay,
I think it's our language in here that's
all right,
off.
okay. Does everybody agree with that assessment? I do. All right, thank you. Turning the page. Notice I'm not going over the ones that are not in color, but if any member of the committee, back to Dallas's point from a few moments ago, wants to bring one of those things that are not colored back up tonight, feel free to do so. We are now at our meeting that was the 22nd of April, and this has to do with section 102. I wonder why we went backward, but that's okay. I'm not even going to try to remember that. So 102, we have in here a motion to table, and we're going to use the local governing body definition to insert the verbiage from Anne Arundel section 1014. So
The motion to table.
So for the voter, we can't just have insert the verbiage from Anne Arundel section 1014.
But I have it here, but the motion was to table.
We tabled the discussion.
So it's like an open action item right now.
Okay. So we want to consider inserting what you're about to read to us, because we tabled this. Okay. So we are going back to revisit 102 which is exercise of powers. And under the local governing body definition, Julie, what does Anne Arundel County say?
Anne Arundel County says, on section 1014, whenever state or federal law confers a power or duty on the county by language that refers to, quote, the local governing body, unquote, or by similar language, any action required of the county shall be taken by the county executive and then referred to the county council for confirmation.
If we made this a new part of Article 1, where would it go? 101, 102, 103, or would this be a brand new? I'm asking anybody. Because I don't think do we have the phrase definition of local governing body in Article 1? I don't think we do.
This came up because it was in the questions from the council.
Thank you.
Why did we feel that we needed to change this?
It specifically says under the comments we got from council, number 1, add a new charter section to define local governing body. So I think we just discussed it in section 102.
Thank you.
As, hey, early on in the discussion, point number 1. So I think it's just adding a new definition somewhere, and whether that goes here or elsewhere, I don't know.
Understood. Thank you, Dallas, for that. So I guess the question is, we tabled it back in April. Does this group feel that we need to, again, thank you, everybody. County Council kind of asked us to look at defining what the local governing body was. Julie, would you be willing to read that again? Everybody, yep, thank you.
Whenever state or federal law confers a power or duty on the county by language that refers to, quote, the local governing body, unquote, or by similar language, comma, any action required of the county shall be taken by the county executive and then referred to the county council for confirmation.
Does that say that anything that the county executive ever does has to go to the county council?
To the local,
Doesn't say that? Or is that what that says?
local governing body. This is how Anne Arundel County.
So I don't mind the
Local
first part of what that said, but the last part gives me a little pause because I'm trying to read it. Does it say, in effect, that anything that the county executive does has to come?
Only according to the laws of Maryland, where they need to do that as legislature.
Can you speak into Sharon? Can you bring your microphone?
I think in the last part of what you said, in accordance with state and federal law, is that what you said?
I don't see, yes, whenever state or federal law confers a power or duty on the county by language that refers to the local governing body or by similar language, any action required of the county shall be taken by the county executive and then referred to the county council for confirmation. This is I think we were saying it's mostly federal documentation that says the local governing body.
As I recall, it was listed as local governing body in some grants and low-interest loans and things, and there needed to be clarification when the documentation from the lender says local governing body, who actually does what. In this case, Anne Arundel says the exec signs it, and then the council has to sign off on it. I would suggest we add this to the definition and rules in Article 11, because that seems to be the best place, so that way when the words come through, it's adding a definition.
So let me ask a question out of the blue of any of our legal people. If the county executive issues an emergency order closing the roads because of snow, I'm making something up.
But that's not what it's saying, Mike.
That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm trying to.
She's saying if we get an order from the state or the federal government, that it flows through the county executive to the council.
Okay.
Am I correct, Julie?
Yes.
Only in those situations, right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. In state law and federal law, there's reference to local governing body.
And
I
we
think-
don't have one.
Right, and I think the point here is it's clarifying that when it says that, then it's going to be exec and council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thoughts of the committee? Yes,
I'm
Sharon?
going to agree that it needs to go in definitions. I don't think there needs to be anything here for the public to try to decipher that. I think a clarification and definitions will
Okay.
take care of it.
Would you like me to make a motion?
It's a motion. It
Okay,
need-
to a motion to add,
Yeah, I can second it, but Dallas was his idea, so,
Six won't have to.
okay,
I think we're all in.
I'll second.
I think.
yep. We're going to define the local governing body as presented by and read out loud by Julie, and we'll get that language. There's a second by Julie. Now we'll discuss that.
The county executive would receive it first anyway, and as the, actually, not written, but technically the head of local government,
Yes.
he would then make that
He, she.
decision, and the council would always be the confirming if it was legislative.
Right. Okay. Discussion on the motion to add this into the Article 11 definition. Local governing body. Sonia?
It's really just a pointless comment, but being that it's 1014 in Anne Arundel section, I would assume that that's where they have it in their definitions too. Just a comment.
You could have saved us all that, Julie. You just wanted to see if
Any
you
more
knew.
discussion on defining local governing body in Article 11? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you for helping me walk through that. Paul and/or Laura, I'm asking a point of clarification. We will be given the final language that we will be passing along to the county council for recommendation, right? Like what we just did here. You're going to get somebody, not a volunteer for, somebody's going to get us the official language, which we will then see one final time before we.
I think that would be best
Thank you.
advice.
We would agree.
Yes, to.
Don't leave it up
so
to us.
Everyone can read through it.
The exact
Yes, this is what we intended.
Because you saw me just get totally confused by our own scorecard. Thank you, Dallas and Julie and everybody for helping me through that. Okay, we are turning to section 204B, number 1. Let's see here. We are changing the word fourth. Sorry, I got to look. So when established, the commission, this is the compensation commission. When established, we were going to change, I'm going to read from it. When established, the commission shall set the compensation and allowances within 15 days after the beginning of the first year of the term of each council, if that complies with state law. And I guess we were going to look in to see if that complies. Have we been able to do that yet? It was, again, because I sat on that compensation review, the recommendation was simply having that review occur in the year before an election was a little bit too weird and too close. So do it the year of right after the election. And I think we needed to see if we could legally do that is sort of where we were.
Yeah.
Because there might be.
Yeah. It seemed to me that when we looked at it, there was a impediment to that.
An impediment.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had to be done.
When it.
Yep.
Okay.
The way it was in the charter, what I'm recollecting is the way we had to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to double check on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if in fact we can't do it, then we could strike 204B1 because we're not allowed to do it, right? And we'll get back. Well, Paul, you'll confirm that?
Yeah, I'm going to go back and check.
Okay, thank you. We made next, moving on, we said let's strike section 206 from the charter, which was the special election to fill council vacancies. So we decided to strike that. And if I'm recalling correctly, Councilwoman Ackley came forth and shared what she had to go through when she was appointed, then had to run, and then is now running for, in a sense, a second time, I don't know, within 2 years of being appointed. So we kind of agreed to strike section 206. Michelle?
The only thing with that, Mike, we should make certain that we can legally do that, that's not a state requirement.
Sure.
I mean, that's the only thing we really should do, is just make sure that's not the way
Okay.
it has to work.
Okay. Great suggestion. Paul,
All right.
is this okay?
Yeah, you're loading me up tonight.
We know we are. So, by the way, the group can kind of see what we'll be doing at the next meeting, right? We'll be having these interpretations. Thanks, we're plotting through. Okay, and I think the next change was to go back, and if we're striking section 206, we had to kind of make some changes to 205, A and B. Is that correct? All right. So once Paul determines if we can legally strike section 206, we can come back and revisit 205A and B. Yes, Sonia? Of course I'm
If I
okay.
go back a minute?
Yes.
I was just going through these minutes because Laura documents them, and we've killed a lot of trees for a
Yep,
reason.
yes.
So, Paul, you did look up the information for, about the compensation committee, and if you look in if you look in the notes from May 20th,
Okay.
you'll see your statement there, and it follows what you recollect. So, trying to take something off your tape, so
Thank you.
Great.
add to it later.
So we're okay to get rid of 206? Is that what?
No, I went back. I went back to
The minutes.
204B1.
Whoa.
I was just, I'm like, Laura gives these minutes for a reason.
Right.
That he looked it up, so.
And I'm asking you, do those minutes reflect that Paul said it was okay to
Yeah.
do?
No, I'm back
Sorry.
on 204B1.
Fourth,
Do it.
first. She's circling.
And I'm saying that we cannot change that from fourth
Yeah.
to first.
That's what I
I
recollect.
went all the way back.
Yeah.
Everybody, cross off 204B in your green score sheet. Thank you very much, Sonia. Thank you, everyone, for
Sorry.
helping me do this. Okay. Paul's going to now, Paul, you're welcome. Thank you, Sonia. You got 206 to look at. Here's another one that we passed in 206, which is weird because we're going to strike it from the charter.
I think we have to
Oh,
add
right,
that to 205. This has to do with.
the unaffiliated voter.
Right.
Right. Okay. So. Right. It only makes mention of state central committees of the two political parties. And because there are more and more, bless you, I think, unaffiliated voters, we wanted to fill in 205 with, so why is it numbered 206? Somebody help me out. Should that just say 205?
Yes.
A or B?
Yeah.
So in the green section that currently says 206, where we talk about unaffiliated voters, it really should be 205. I'm asking the group. Because we are, again, looking at 205A and vacancies, there's no mention in there for what to do if an unaffiliated member of the council leaves his or her term. So this was our attempt to add that, because right now it only talks about the two parties, if you will.
Do we have an unaffiliated member currently?
We do not, but forward thinking, since this group only meets every 10 years, I think it's certainly reasonable to predict, or I don't know if predict is the right word. It's reasonable to think that there could be an unaffiliated member of the council in the next 10 years. So this was our attempt to try to address that proactively. Michelle, I'm just recollecting.
There was
Julie, Bob, excuse
There
me.
was an unaffiliated candidate for county executive.
That's correct.
At the last
There
election.
was.
That's correct.
So, I mean, we've had people run.
Yeah.
They get elected, but they ran.
That's right.
Could get elected.
Thank you, Bob. Julie?
Okay, as I remember,
Yes.
as my notes say, on 205A and B, the last sentence says, unless there is a special election, blah, 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 right?
Yep.
Okay, so my theory was, if we're striking 206, then we're striking those two last sentences in 205A and B and finishing the paragraph with what we had in here, to fill a vacant position. Because then otherwise it ends up with what we have, what we're going to do with members at large or affiliated or whatever. So the last sentence, to fill a vacant position of an unaffiliated, that would be the last sentence of both those paragraphs, replacing unless there is a special election. And that makes sense to me, if we do it that way.
Very good recollection. I'm just taking a note
I
here.
don't have to read the whole thing right over and over.
No.
Okay, you got it.
205A and B if we get rid of 206. All
We
right,
replace the last sentence.
all right. Yes, Sonia?
So we took out, Julie, the whole last sentence, so, because there's, after that comma, any member so elected shall serve for unexpired term of his predecessor in office until his successor shall qualify. We took that out? I know we had a conversation.
I have it marked on the unless there's a special election. So if we don't have a special election, we have to take out special election, but I'm not sure it's the whole sentence.
Right, I think it's all before that. I think you're right, though. I have in my notes, unless there is a special election as described in section 206 to fill the seat is what's crossed out.
Yeah, that's what I do, and it's, that sentence would start with any, would be
Yeah.
the first word, so that any member so elected shall serve for the unexpired term of his predecessor.
That's what I have too, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and so where does the, what did we say when we put it in here? Where does to fill a vacant position of an unaffiliated member who has left office, unaffiliated voters would submit their name to county council? Where does that go?
My presumption is it goes before any member so elected shall serve, and after the part about
Elected at large?
like if it's a political party, blah, 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 district member at large. So it would go right in after large and before any.
So if we struck, which I'm hearing we struck, the sentence unless there's a special election, I don't see that anywhere, shouldn't,
Because we said we weren't going to have a special election.
We strike 206.
That the county council elected the replacement, that replacement would serve the unexpired term of the predecessor.
okay, thank you. Wow. This is probably the most difficult thing we've done so far, is reviewing the scorecard. Other thoughts on 205 and 6 on the scorecard? Okay. Yes?
I just had a question. If, you know how some of these are sub-bulleted or numbered or whatever? Like, if you look at section 204B as 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's a little bit easier to see. Is there a reason why, I know I just had this in my notes, I'm the queen of a bullet. So, and I understand that we can't bullet everything, but it's a lot in section A. And if we did that, is it something that would be clerical
Clerical in nature?
clerical in nature, because it's not changing the meaning of it, it's just making it so I don't have to look at all that all the time. It was just a thought, and we could talk about it later, but it was something I had in here, because it's just a lot.
Well, it's not a bad thought. Laura, I'm not asking you to do it. I'm saying, if we were to recommend this, is this a publisher thing? Is this an easy thing to do? And Sonia, to your point, might we need to go through the entire charter and go, here, this one should be bulleted and that one shouldn't be bulleted? No, I'm just saying, if we're going to do it in theory in section 205, do we got to go through every single big paragraph and say this should be bulleted? So, Laura, back to my question to you.
I honestly don't know the answer
All
because
right.
I know our publisher is pretty strict on the outline formats
Okay.
that, just to be consistent all the way through the charter.
Right.
So I'm not real sure how they would feel about that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just see some that are sub-bulleted
Yep.
that look small. It's fine. Just a
Yep.
question.
Thank you, both. We've been at this for an hour. My brain is about to blow up. We're going to take a 5-minute break. It is 6:06. Get up, stretch your legs. Thank you, everyone. Okay,
I don't even remember.
let us resume. To the group, truly, I offer both thanks and apologies. We haven't done this in months. The devil's in the details. We're in the weeds. So this is not fun. This is painstaking. I realize that I'm up here being a little dizzied, and I ask your forgiveness and patience as we muddle through this. Okay. I believe we are in the green section on the top of page 3, which is dealing with section 305. And we are recommending to change the language in the first line of section F to add "and the county executive," and eliminate the last line in section F that says all actions of the county council pursuant to this section shall be exempt from the executive veto. This had to do with council authority, and it's really, I think our thought was to kind of balance that out since we now have a county executive form of government. It was a close vote for what it's worth. This was an 8-6 vote. This was not unanimous. So where we are right now is that's what we're recommending. I'd be lying if I could recall the debate that led to this vote, but if somebody else has any strong thoughts that they'd like to bring forward. Yes, sir, Bob?
I sent out a memo after we voted on this at the next meeting, and I'm not finding it, but the memo I sent out essentially was that the internal auditor is supposed to be completely independent of what they audit, and they audit the county executive and the departments of the county executive. And it is, if you look at the recommendations, you can't have the county executive be a part of the approval process for the internal auditor, because that's who's being audited. And with all due respect, it's a mistake to change this. The county council is supposed to have this. It's the way they oversee the executive branch. While I understand the theory behind putting it in and trying to make it fair, the reality is the purpose of the internal auditor is to audit the executive branch. And if you have the executive branch having authority for it, thank you. Sonia found my memo for me.
Of course
Somebody was on the ball here.
Of course she did. Thank you, Sonia.
But, I mean, I'll be happy to send it out again. I would ask that whether we do it tonight or not, that we at least look at this. And I attached things from the, auditing standards, and all these things are clear that the this is supposed to be something that the county executive has no authority over. So while I understand the reason for it, it's just, it shouldn't be, we should not be changing it.
Thank you, Bob. Wayne?
To be pragmatic, I don't see the point in putting something forward that the county council isn't going to adopt and accept. So let's rethink it.
Cut.
Excuse me.
It might be one that gets cut, right?
Oh,
I don't think it has a chance of being
I don't think
adopted by
it
the.
does either. So, I'm simply saying that, I think what we want to put forward are those things that we think rise to the level of importance that will be seriously considered by the county council, and I don't think this would be.
I'm agreeing with that, and I'm agreeing with this. Sonia?
I think this is what I was supposed to be workshopping.
It was, the auditor.
Right, because I have, that's one of the reasons why I have it, in full disclosure, as well. So, I don't know if we're going to still talk about it October 7th, but
Yes.
I could still do.
So let's do that. Truly, I'm in agreement with what I just heard to my left and what I just heard to my right. Yes, sir, Phil?
With your permission, I would vote to reconsider the action we took on 305F at this time.
Okay, and is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Some discussion on it. I'll add a discussion point, which is the caveat that we've done, and you've actually suggested it on more than a few occasions. I think I'm going to vote in favor of what you're doing, with the caveat that we'll still hear Sonia's report on her. Yeah,
It's just to reconsider.
absolutely. This is just to reconsider.
Yeah.
So by reconsidering, are we saying we're
Start discussion again.
okay? So thank you, Phil, for that Robert's Rules clarification. So Phil has put on the floor a motion to reconsider 305. There's a second. Once it's reconsidered, we can discuss it again, okay?
5F.
305 F. Yes. Phil, is that correct?
F.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to reconsider, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Oh, opposed? Thank you, Michelle. I apologize. So now that we're reconsidering it, would this be a time for any new motion to be entertained by Bob? Or would the group like to hear the workshop report from Sonia at the next meeting? And we can do either. I'll entertain a motion or a thought from the group as to how to proceed.
I would move that we wait until we have Sonia's report. I mean, she did the work, and I think it's incumbent upon us to hear what she has.
So I might suggest,
researched.
we don't need that motion. I might suggest that we can just leave this and we come back to it. Is that correct? I'm looking, if
We didn't really need the motion to reconsider if that's.
fair, okay, no. Okay, and again, I'm trying to, we can entertain,
Perhaps Sonia was ready to
Nope.
say.
she's ready on October the 7th.
Be here today. So.
Yes, she wasn't going to be here today, so. Make your motion again, Wayne. We're doing motions tonight. Go ahead.
Mike, do we want to let her do her report tonight?
Excuse me?
Do we want to let her do her
don't think
report
she has-
tonight?
She's not ready
Okay,
tonight, yeah.
all right.
No, apologize.
Sorry, Sonia.
So, yeah, let's just do that. Let's leave it.
leave
We
it
will
alone until the
revisit
next meeting.
305 on October the 7th, as we were talking about.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Phil, thank you, and thank you, everyone. Bob, keep your notes handy that Sonia just
Actually
came,
found them
absolutely,
after
good.
she's found them.
Great, thank you, everyone. 314A, let's get to that. It currently reads, generally, neither the county council nor any of its members shall. This all has to do with not interfering with the executive branch of government. We have recommended to delete the word generally and insert the words, unless for the purpose of inquiry or information, neither the county council nor any of its members shall. Everybody okay with that? That passed unanimously. Again, just reading the scorecard. All right. Thank you. Down to the bottom of page 3 is turn to section 402, please. Let's see. Oh, this had to do with the secondary employment and/or full-time employment of the county executive. And we are recommending, I'm not sure in what section, if someone can help me find the section where we thought we were going to add this. I'll ask anybody.
In the first paragraph.
First paragraph.
Thank you.
Section
Thank you, Phil. Okay. So in the first paragraph, which outlines the executive powers and duties, next to the bottom, the second sentence currently says, the county executive shall devote his full time to the duties of the office. And we are recommending that it says the county executive shall devote his or her full time to the duties of the office and not partake in secondary employment. That passed 8 in favor, 3 opposed, and 4 abstained from that particular question. This obviously had a lot of discussion. I think we were all in agreement that Susie Jones, the new county executive, who has a family business, is still allowed to gather income from that family business. Again, we talked about Governor Hogan still having his real estate business and still getting income from that. But we were concerned that Susie Jones wasn't going to work from 8 until 5 as the county executive because she had to go to the family business from 2 to 4 every day. And so I think that's the spirit of where we were. Help me out if I'm off base here. So not partake in secondary employment. Now that I'm looking at it again, X number of months later, I'm not sure we've really, I'm not sure if this language covers what we're attempting to do. It's just my thought. Maybe the group is okay, but I don't think we should punt on this one again. If we're okay with the language, so be it. If we're not, now would be the time to craft something better. Sonia?
I think, yeah, because this was one that we talked about a lot, right?
We did.
Like a lot.
Yeah, we did.
And I think that we ended up with, kind of in the spirit of what you said for Susie Jones, employment means actively working, have to go in for hours and everything like that, versus secondary income, where you are, of course you're allowed to get that if you have investments, real estate, whatever, and somebody else is working and you're getting money.
Yep.
That's a wonderful thing. So we don't want to stop that. But I
Right.
think employment was here, the spirit of, again, actively needing to be there, and you're not going to be able to do your county executive duties.
And do we think this language covers that? I'm just asking the group. If the group
I am
thinks it
looking
does,
at employment.
then we're good. I'd prefer we not punt and get it. I'd prefer we try and this is an important one. I'd like us to find some unanimity in it. I don't know how we'll do that. Michelle?
Like, the only thing I'm going to say about this,
Yeah.
somebody's a county executive, they're here at night if they're needed, they're here in the morning if they're needed on the weekend.
That's right.
However, they have a family business and they're not working on a Sunday. Are you saying they can't work in that family business?
I'm certainly not trying to say that.
But
And I don't
you're
think
saying
that,
they can't partake of secondary employment.
again, that's why
I'm just saying, I think you
I don't think-
really, it's a sticky wicket.
It
It really
is,
is.
it is.
And you don't want to discourage someone who could be highly qualified from running for office and coming into this position because they have a family business or a business that's they can primarily have run by other people.
Yeah.
But when they get home and eat dinner, if they want to do something with the books of their business
was
and they're
gonna
not
say-
required to be here.
right, to your point, as currently written, it's dinner time. I want to go look at the books of my secondary business. I would be partaking at that moment in time in secondary employment. Right? So I think that we have not quite nailed this properly.
Maybe the way to term it is that it is their primary and foremost employment, and that it precedes any other type of business they have. I don't know how to, Joe, I see you standing.
Joe, I see you standing. Please, sir. Yes, sir. Come to the mic. Thank you.
I'm just going to give you all something else to chew on
Yeah,
besides this.
please. Yes.
You get a county executive that likes to fish or play golf,
Sure.
and he just doesn't show up to work. How do you control that? So he's got qualified people,
Yeah.
hopefully,
Yeah.
working for him. But every time somebody tries to get up with him, he's in the middle of the bay or he's down at so it's kind of,
Yeah.
how do you control that? So how are you going to control this, I guess?
That's a good, we all remember Mayor Ireton when he was the mayor of the city of Salisbury. Now granted, that was at that time a part-time position. He was a school teacher by day, right? And obviously that was secondary employment, and he was elected and then reelected. So, Joe, that's a great, as with anybody. So I don't think we're where we need to be. So how can we get where we need to be?
I guess, Mike, what I'm trying to say is, how much control do you want to place over a human being? You're electing somebody into office that is an adult, should have enough sense to know this is his primary position, and should be dedicated to that position. How many words and how many little things are you going to put in to try to control a person? I mean, that's all I'm saying.
And what it currently says, kind of to your point, maybe this is an example of let's just stick with what it says. And what it currently says, the county executive, who shall be the chief executive officer of the county and who shall faithfully execute the laws, the county executive shall devote his full time to the duties of the office.
Right.
The duties and responsibilities are the following.
And he's
I
expected
would
to do
move
that.
that,
It's there.
if it's available, that we not add the words and not partake of secondary employment.
So-
We originally said. I think that's a mistake.
Mr. Strasburg made the motion. I was going to ask him what he meant by it. when-
I've come full circle on this, and quite frankly, following up on what Michelle said, we have to give our citizens credit for having some common sense, and hopefully candidates who would run for this office would have the good common sense to know what the current language in the charter means. And I put this forward, and I'd be happy to take it off the table because I don't think it's necessary.
So point of order, yes, excuse me, Tony, yes, sir.
There's one thing I did want to mention. You could have someone who's a National Guardsman or a reservist. The law in Maryland, back to 1940, says you're entitled to 4 weeks military leave with pay, and you get paid from your employer.
Yep.
So you have somebody, who's a hotshot, male or female. They've been in the military 6 years. They get out. They get elected in the government, and they stay in the Guard or Reserve. And I fell into that. I'd hate to see that happen to somebody because there are a lot of good people who fall into that predicament. So we got to be, you're right, I think we got to be careful. That guardsman might be away for 3 weeks.
Well, again,
There are people, I hope, in the government who can make the decision. They may have to call him or her, but we need to be kind of careful. We're going to get ourselves in a box.
well, again, using the city of Salisbury, Mayor Day, as we know, just served this country for the better part of a year and was deployed and handed over the powers of the office. Point of order, since we made a motion to enact this change, we need a motion to take it, if that's where we're headed, right? I'm looking, Laura, should we make a motion or just scratch it off the list?
I would say move to rescind it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Since I made the original motion, I'll make a motion that we rescind this proposed change.
Second.
Thank you. Motion from Wayne, a second from Tony. Any discussion? Yeah, Bob, you first, and
I just
Sonia.
make the point that this, you have to read this section, I think, in conjunction with 609B, which talks about full-time requirement. And when we talked about 609B, it was a consensus that the county executive is a full-time position. And when we get to it, you'll see that we made the choice to remove the words other than county executive, so that it was clear that it was going to be a full-time position. And this section says shall devote their entire time during the official working hours, which I think addresses Michelle's
saying.
point.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
I just think adopting this motion to rescind is the correct thing to do.
Thank you. Sonia, I
If they
think-
don't
yeah,
do their
Michelle,
job,
excuse
there are
me.
going to be consequences.
Correct, that's
I mean,
right.
you know,
That's right.
There will be consequences
right.
if they don't fulfill the position.
Yeah.
Sonia, I think you had a,
And I guess the way to look at it is, if you know somebody is, I kind of feel like this was probably a response to some things that happened recently. So if you're a full-time surgeon or something like that, something where you have a very major job, you wouldn't be elected. I mean, I guess the charter doesn't have to govern that. You shouldn't be elected, or the committee, the Democratic committee or whoever shouldn't put you up as the candidate, is what we're saying, just using some common sense. Is that
yeah.
fair? Okay.
Any more discussion on the motion to rescind our change to 402? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to revert back, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Thank you. Good discussion, everyone. And I think a good decision. Good for us. We're at section 405. Thank you. This is where we were earlier, Tony, which is to make the age of the county executive 30. Yep, we're still okay with that? All right, thank you. Got a whole big green section here. First one is
Mike,
yes,
just a
sorry,
point.
Sonia.
So for county council, 25.
Correct.
Or county executive, 30.
That's correct.
Okay.
Provided the law that Paul's going to look up, where Michelle was going, how old you got to be when you file, or is it when you take office? Yes.
Okay.
406, sorry, let me get to 406. This had to do with the compensation of the county executive. We agreed to set the county executive's salary at a minimum of $120,000. It's currently $85,000. That passed. 12 in favor, 1 opposed. So, again, I was the one who brought this up, so I can remember it. The compensation committee makes a recommendation to the county council, much like the charter review committee makes recommendations. But because the first line of this says it quite boldly, that the charter says this is what the compensation is, I would have to say this was a bit of an end around to try and implement what the, I'm being fair in saying that. Are we comfortable keeping this? You also, go ahead.
The charter says that the compensation shall be not less than $85,000. If you look, I think it was the Anne Arundel County Charter, I forget what their charter says, but it's some ridiculous number like $25,000, and that county executive is making a lot more than $25,000. So the county council already has the wherewithal to change the compensation level of a county executive that if they so choose. So I don't think, again, I think this is one that if we put forward, I think the chances of council putting this on the ballot are not good.
So I'm not disagreeing with that. I guess what I might do is You know, when we make our recommendations to the county council, I'm hoping everybody on this body comes forward. And having been a member of the compensation committee, I think when we made the presentation and those salary changes were unanimous and they were overwhelming, they were summarily dismissed. And so I don't want anything that we do to be summarily dismissed. So I hear you. I'm not so sure that the voters would, I'm not saying what the county council would do, but I'm not sure what the voters would say about a county executive salary being $120,000. The Compensation Review Committee thought overwhelmingly that that was appropriate. Anyway, Phil, yes, and then Sharon, excuse me.
A lot of what our discussion is revolved around in this charter review is how to have someone conduct the office of county executive in a competent way, in a leadership position, forward thinking. And I think at least my vote for this 120,000 is to put a price tag or a compensation for that job commensurate to what we hope will, I don't think we've been very well served by the county executive form of government, frankly. We voted to keep that form of government, but I think we can improve on it quite a bit. One way is to perhaps pay something to attract somebody who will really do the job well.
Thank you, Phil. Over here, Sharon.
I
Yep.
can't add a thing.
All right,
Pretty
okay.
much is what I was gonna say.
Again, we don't need to, if we're okay with it, we leave it stand like we're doing everything else. Yes, Bob, yes.
Well, the committee, I think the overwhelming consensus of the committee was they wanted to make clear that they thought the county executive should be a full-time position, at least under 609B. Before, there was some possibility that maybe it wasn't a full-time position, but it is now a full-time position if the county council were to go along with our suggestion. And I assume that part of the reason for wanting to increase this is because this is now, it's supposed to be full-time. And the salary ought to be commensurate with a full-time position. And, you know, the county executive probably ought to make as much money at least as the office, the department heads that are under him. So that's the reason I thought that if we were going to make it a full-time position, he ought to be paid as a full-time position, and he ought to be paid commensurate with the other department heads that he's in charge of. So that was the reason I voted for it.
My only thing with that is if you're going to raise the salary, are you going to raise the bar on education background? I mean, that would be my only concern.
Again,
I think that's a really important thing. You're putting somebody in a position where, yeah, he's got a lot of assistants under him. But if someone's going to step in and you're going to pay them more, do you want more of a educational requirement? You know,
I don't know if that's
I'm just saying that's
hear
where
you.
I guess that's where my thoughts are coming from.
understood.
You know.
So,
I think that got discussed, but I think there are an awful lot of people who don't have necessarily a formal education, quote unquote, who are extremely successful and are extremely smart.
I agree.
So I don't know that having a formal education makes someone a good leader or would make them necessarily a good county executive. I mean, the voters have to choose who they're going to elect, and I don't know how you put an education component into it.
yes, sir, Tony.
What do department heads make? I have no clue.
Unfortunately,
It's a public number.
Wayne,
What do?
department heads.
It depends on the department,
Okay.
but I would tell you that most of them make more than $85,000 a year. Yeah.
Up over $100,000.
Yeah,
That's-
and I have mixed feelings about this because, I do think that the compensation as it currently stands is not adequate enough to attract the kind of people that we want to attract. On the other hand, The charter doesn't establish that level of compensation, and it simply establishes a minimum.
Minimum.
And what makes me uncomfortable with this is that I just have a nagging feeling that we're usurping county council authority. And that bothers me. We have a process in place now where the Compensation and Allowance Committee comes forward with recommendations for the council to act upon. And I'm uncomfortable with short-circuiting that process.
I agree with you. Also, the only other thing you could do is leave as that is, but say the county council will pay a minimum, but somehow the pay shall commiserate with experience.
Well, that's again getting into
Background?
the purview of the Compensation Review Committee and all of that.
Same thing, it's cutting right into what you're
Yeah,
trying to do.
that's right.
I understand.
Sonia?
Understanding that this is a minimum and we don't want to go through this whole thing with, because that's what the compensation committee is for. However, this is the minimum from 10 years ago. So even if it's not 120,000, probably should look at the number and maybe even see what inflation was and what 85,000 was 10 years ago, and maybe even put that in as the minimum.
I did that.
Okay.
115,000.
So I'm just saying, keeping up with the
Pretty close.
times.
Sure.
Keeping up with the times. Understanding it's not a minimum and not trying to usurp that, but let's be realistic, because 85,000 10 years ago was very different than 85,000 now.
So here's where we are. We've taken a vote. We are overwhelmingly in favor. We've had good discussion. Unless I see any sort of massive movement to reconsider this, and if anybody wants to make that motion, they can make that motion. We'll move on. Okay, all right, great, thank you. Good discussion, everyone.
Leaving it alone.
We're leaving it alone.
Okay.
Correct.
It's quarter of.
Excuse me.
Quarter of.
It's quarter up. Thank you for that. Which means I'm going to draw a line. Everybody draw the line with me. 407 B and C are being workshopped.
Yep.
I'll take one moment as the chair to really impress upon, and this includes myself, that when Bob and I were talking today, we both laughed because our last prediction on how well things would go, we missed that mark by a lot. But we thought we'd have a quick meeting, the last meeting, and it didn't go so quickly. We are most definitely, we are in the home stretch. Once we get through this, and again, we're making progress. Paul's got a lot of work to do. The next meeting will be really, bless you, workshop-driven and finishing that work up. But I am hopeful, this I was talking with Bob about earlier today, I'm hopeful that our work, we might, be within 3 meetings, perhaps 4 of concluding our work, which, again, that'd be pretty good for all of us, right? So we're trying. So let's hold everybody to that. The second, so let's just do that. Just everybody who has a workshop, and I'll remind again here as we conclude, we have 407B and C. That's Wayne and Bob kind of looking into that. We have Sonia doing some homework on the audit. Dr. Basehart will be doing a presentation on sections 201B and C, I think, Bob, right? Paul is going to do his best to bring us some Lindsay Rader encapsulations. Michelle, you have a workshop.
On Resolution 131, 2012.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 131 and 112, did you say?
2012.
Yes, thank you. Okay. And Matt Tillman and I have a workshop to do on, Matt, do you have that number?
407B and C.
Yes.
So we got 4 people workshopping that?
No. We just put forward that we would workshop it.
Got it.
Workshop.
We didn't volunteer to do the work.
Oh, my bad. That's, okay, I apologize. I take that back.
We
Wayne.
volunteered
You're
to
right.
do the work.
That's right. You're right. Thank you very much. Matt, that's you and
Isn't that
me.
right, Wayne?
That's right. Violet told us. We're on it. We are on it. Thank you. And again, thank you, everyone, for your patience this evening as we are in the weeds pretty deeply here. With that, it's 6:45. This is time for public comments. Yes, Laura, wow. Mr. Dale, yes?
The next meeting would be October the 7th,
Okay,
just to stick on the schedule with the first and third Thursday.
right. Okay, so that'd be the 7th and the 21st in October. Back here. Right, we're here, Laura, for the remainder, correct. Mr. Taylor, welcome.
Good evening,
Yes,
Robert
sir.
Taylor. I was going to say we've got to stop meeting like this, but I think there's a little bit further to go than the home stretch. I'd say you're maybe in the far turn, hitting the head of the stretch.
Fair enough.
I think more meetings are needed. A number of people have told me they can't understand what's happening. I don't think it's entirely the committee's fault. The broadcast and news media around here is pathetic. That's part of the problem. I was sorry I couldn't make it for your discussion on the comments by Lindsay Rader, the bond counsel. I've read through them. I got them this morning or this afternoon from Laura, and I don't disagree with anything she says. In fact, I think she makes good points. But I think a broader point to be made is that these are very technical matters, and I think they also are part of the overall budget process that she's not commenting on. She's looking at primarily the bond part, and it would be wise to have a complete review of that. As far as them being technical, and it's a strong idea for Paul to work with her. If I were this committee, I would just suggest to the council that they work with her and Paul and develop whatever they develop.
I should let you know that though you weren't here, that's exactly what we were
Well,
discussing.
good, because why have the council go through all of this again with her for whatever she charges? And it's worth it. I'm not saying she shouldn't charge
Understood.
anything. So that's that. Just running through some of the other things on Anne Arundel County Charter 1014. I think you want to take a close look at that language, because when you have a broad provision like that, well, I think maybe a little bit more detail. For example, there may be directives from the state or federal government that provide more definition to what they mean by local government body in a particular mandate. So there could be the problem there, that there might be a conflict that way. There might also be a conflict with the Maryland legislation, particularly the Express Powers Act, which uses that term for some things in certain contexts. Just because Anne Arundel County did something doesn't mean that it's gospel. Moving on, just a couple of other quick things, and the salary review timing. I think I've got an opinion I did a couple years ago on this for the council. Laura probably has it, and where we covered this question was asked, and I won't get into that opinion because I can't quite frankly remember it. You'll have to get and read it.
Yes, no worries.
The special election section 206, that was put in the charter by referendum in 2016. Now, this gets back into this issue of tax cap. County executive was put in the charter by referendum. We shouldn't do anything about it. That's not, in my view, good policy, but that's been expressed by this committee. As far as whether there should be a special election provision or not, it doesn't really turn my turnips. I don't care. But I would point out to you that it was done just, 6 years ago, or 5 years ago. That was done because for many years, certain counties did have special elections. It was challenged about 20 years ago. It went to the Maryland Court of Appeals, which, as I recall, ruled that there's a provision in the Maryland Constitution, don't ask me which one, that made it illegal to have special elections. The General Assembly, I think the next year or the year after, we had a statewide referendum. We amended the Maryland Constitution to change that, and this provision was put in by our council and by referendum shortly thereafter. So that's the story on why it's that way. And I think before you do anything on that, you ought to look at what the reasoning was 5 or 6 years ago when the change was made. They didn't have to make the change. It didn't have to be done. That wasn't the directive from the state. The state directive was you could do it, and they decided, the council, and passed by referendum to do it. So take a look at that. The use of bullets, not a good idea. I mean, if you want to section things off, use ABC 1, 2, 3. Much easier to reference, and that's the way codes and statutes are written.
With the one,
Yeah.
but yeah, okay.
The county executive compensation, I agree totally with Mr. Strasburg. This is not the bailiwick of this committee. There's a separate process for that, and it should be left that way. He mentioned I think it was Anne Arundel County charter with a very low amount. Look at the other charters, they're all very low. Howard County, I think I mentioned this at a meeting, I think it's like 18,000, and the county it makes 200,000 now. So there's no need to do anything in the charter at all, and that's really not in the bailiwick of this committee. We have a separate compensation review group for that. And that's all for tonight.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good night.
Yes, sir, thank you. With that, everyone, thank you so much for your patience and participation, and we are adjourned, and we'll see you on the 7th.
Thank you.
Thank you.